As always, I am Mason. He is Gautam, and this is Ken Griffey Jr. We are here to talk about the biggest sporting event of 2024. It started last week. I think we all know what we're talking about. The trade deadline.
Oh, what?
Yeah,
I thought we were talking about the Olympics today.
The what?
The Olympics.
I does not compute. What are those?
They're this crazy event that happens every 4 years. It's wild.
What do they do? Do they use did they just paint walls like Olympia paint?
They do every sporting activity except for trading baseball players.
Interesting. So they play baseball.
Coming soon.
But not now.
Not now.
Yeah, so why would we talk about that?
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, so
you're talking sense.
Through the Olympics, it is trade deadline season, and there was a lot that happened. I believe this might be a fake number, and if it is, blame Gautam because he's the one that told it to me. I believe there were more than 60 trades made within 6 days of the trade deadline this year.
There were 60, and Ken Rosenthal told me that, so you can blame him.
Okay, so blame the guy with the bow tie if that number is wrong. And that is just the sheer number of transactions, not the number of players who have moved organizations. That number is much, much higher than 60. So we're going to kind of break down some of these trades. There were some really pretty big trades that could have a pretty substantial impact on more likely the National League playoff races because they're a lot more of a jumbled mess, but there's some moves that are definitely going to take some already juggernauts and potentially elevate them more, take some teams who've kind of been struggling to separate themselves and maybe give them that lurch forward, and then some teams who know that they suck have finally admitted to themselves that they suck and are going with the old Joe Madden saying, try not to suck. So they trade their good players for prospects in the hopes that eventually they might not suck.
And then there's the Rockies.
Although the A's didn't really make very many moves either.
They at least made more than the Rockies. They traded Lucas Urseg to the Royals, a reliever with 5 years of control.
Give me names that people know who they are, because I don't know who that guy. I didn't know he was a major leaguer. I thought he was a minor leaguer. All right,
pretty good.
But anyway, it is also the Olympics going on right now, so I think it would be a missed opportunity, perhaps, if we didn't award the Dundies the Olympic medals, the gold, silver, bronze. So we're going to break these down into a couple different categories. We're going to give some awards out. And let's just start, I think, with the big trades. Like the teams that went out and made a big splash. And where do you want to start? What's that first trade that you want to talk about?
Let's start with starting pitching, because I think that was one of the big themes, is that there weren't a lot of good starters out there. There were some pie in the sky guys that didn't end up getting moved, like Blake Snell, Garrett Crochet, like your ace type guys. None of those guys got moved. So then you kind of move down to the next tier. There's still some solid guys. And the two guys I'm thinking of are Jack Flaherty and Yusei Kikuchi. So with the Flaherty deal, he got moved on Tuesday, traded from Detroit to the Dodgers, and the Dodgers urgently needed starting pitching as they've been dealing with lots of injuries. And they gave up 2 prospects, including Trey Sweeney, who's now been traded twice as a prospect. What do you think of the Flaherty deal?
So the Flaherty deal is a little bit interesting to me, because since that deal happened, it has come out that the Yankees were another team that was like huge in this, and then they decided not to pull the trigger because of some health issues on Flaherty's side. So the Dodgers are definitely getting a good rotation arm. Like, Jack Flaherty never turned into the number one ace, one of the top 5 pitchers in the league that I think was the hopes for him when he was a prospect and a young starter. But he has always been a really, really solid, relatively consistent starter in the majors. He's dealt with some injury issues, and that's kind of held him back a bit. And he's shown this year that he's been able to pitch really well for the Tigers. When they were starting out hot, he was a pretty big reason for that. So the Dodgers are looking at this going, okay, a guy who's consistent, a guy who's going to pitch in like the mid to high 3s ERA. He's going to keep you in ball games. He does have some swing and miss that if he can unlock it. And so there's a lot of upside for the Dodgers here. The downside is that they're already dealing with a ton of injuries. Yeah. Jack Flaherty is not exactly unfamiliar with the IL. So you're kind of hoping that he can stay healthy, and at least until a couple guys come back, and that you could almost have some kind of a cycle as they tend to do with their rotation. So I really like the trade. The Diamondbacks, or not the Diamondbacks, the Tigers, sorry. The Tigers shouldn't have kept Flaherty because he's on a 1-year deal. They're not going to make the playoffs. So it made all too much sense to trade him. So I really like this trade for both sides, with the caveat that Jack just has to stay somewhat healthy for the rest of the season. He doesn't have to make every start, but a majority of them, and then be available for the playoffs. And then I think it's a pretty win-win trade.
Yeah. I'm just going to go to the next one because we have a lot to talk about. And I thought you did a great job with talking about the Flaherty trade. With the Yusei Kikuchi trade, everyone's saying that the Astros overpaid. They gave up 3 prospects in this deal. They gave up Joey Loperfido, who's played a little bit as a rookie this year with Houston. He's a first baseman / outfielder. They also gave up, who else did they give up?
Will Wagner and Jake Bloss.
Yeah, Jake Bloss, who's a promising starting pitcher. And then Will Wagner is actually the son of Billy Wagner.
Is he really?
Yeah.
Did not know that.
I don't know anything about his baseball skills, but he's got good bloodlines.
Well, he's 25, and I didn't know that he was a professional ball player, so.
He was included in a big trade, I guess.
True. Yeah. But no,
So like with the Kikuchi deal, the Astros, I get it from their perspective because they were desperate. We talked about the Dodgers having injuries in their pitching rotation. The Astros have even more injuries. Like, who's even left in the rotation from opening day this year? I think it's Framber and Ronel Blanco, who is a sub, who only broke into the rotation because of other injuries. They're really banged up with Verlander being down. Guys coming back from Tommy John are not doing so hot in their rehab.
Was Hunter Brown in the rotation to start the year, or was he in the pen?
He was in the rotation, so yeah, he's lasted through the year. He's been pretty good, but they're managing with guys like Spencer Arrighetti, and others in spot starts. So getting Kikuchi is a guy that he's going to pitch for them probably in a playoff game, and that's super valuable. There's not a lot of other teams that traded for a starter that for sure is going to be in the rotation for a playoff team, basically.
Yeah. And I think the other thing that I'll mention about Kikuchi is there were a lot of guys that were on the market this year that, some of them didn't get traded, like your Garrett Crochets, but there were a lot of guys who have been pitching really well, but don't really have a track record of pitching deep into a season. Yusei Kikuchi, that's not really as big a concern with him. Like, he's pitched 170 innings. Well, he's not actually eclipsed 170, like that round number, but he's been right around 160, 170 most of his career. So he's got a solid 45 more innings until he reaches that point. So, like, you trust that his arm is not really going to dead arm as quickly as you might be concerned about with going out and trading for a guy like Crochet. And you're right. He is a solid pitcher. Like, he's not having a stellar season. He's got a 4.75 ERA. He walks a fairly decent number of guys, and he gets bit by the home run bug a little bit. So he's definitely gotten unlucky. Like, his ERA and FIP, his ERA FIP is separated by over 1. His BABIP is 340. So there's some luck there that's kind of screwing him over.
I do worry about a left-handed pitcher going into that ballpark and having to deal with the Crawford boxes when he already has a home run problem. So that's something to watch.
Yeah. Because, like, I say he has a home run problem, and this is the best year he's ever had at not giving up home runs. Huh. And he still gives up 1.3 per 9 innings.
Interesting.
So, yeah, there's definitely a couple of things to be concerned about. He also has the fastest average fastball velocity that he's ever had in his career. So maybe things are changing for him, and it won't be as big of a concern as maybe it would have been back in 2019. So, but yeah, they were absolutely desperate. They had to make that move. I'm a little bit surprised that they weren't in on even a second starter, just given the issues that they have.
Yeah.
So I think the other guy that they got at the deadline was, I believe, Jacob Ferguson, a reliever from the Yankees. And I don't even know.
Caleb Ferguson.
What did I say?
Jacob.
Caleb Ferguson. Thank you. It was him for Kelly Austin. So they traded a younger, a younger minor league reliever for a guy who's going to be able to come in and help stabilize their bullpen this year. Hopefully, that's what they're hoping. And their bullpen has also not been great. Like, pitching has been kind of the Achilles heel for the Astros. So they do go out and kind of fill a couple holes. Let's see. So I think the one of the big trades I want to talk about is one that went down between the New York Yankees and the Miami Marlins. So the Yankees have, the last couple weeks, coming kind of right into the All-Star break and right out of it, the Yankees have kind of hit a wall. They've really been struggling to get things going offensively. Pitching has not been as great as it was early in the season. You've kind of had Luis Gil come back to earth just a little bit. Garrett Cole hasn't come back and been as dominant as they had hoped. And that infield in the back of the order for the Yankees had not produced at all this entire season. So they had to go out and do something. Gleyber Torres is the worst defensive second baseman in the major leagues this year. So they need some upgraded defense in the infield. So what do? They go out and trade for an electric young second baseman center fielder named Jazz Chisholm.
Yeah, super exciting, right? I mean, I like Jazz on the Yankees because he doesn't fit the Yankees team. He's actually an athletic guy. They've got like all their slugger types. They're a slow team. They're an old team. Now they inject some youth. They inject some athleticism, some spirit, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, that's part of the thing with the Yankees to me is, like, they have really good players. A lot of their really good players are a bit more reserved. And so the team just doesn't have like an outward personality that people can really connect with. Because you see this team with like a ridiculous win total and with guys who hit a ridiculous number of home runs. And then it just feels a little stale. Bringing in Verdugo, that helped. Verdugo is so fun to watch. The dude just has fun all the time. Jazz brings a second guy to pair with him. It's going to get electric in Yankee Stadium with those two. So,
yeah. But some of those guys like haven't produced. Like you've been mentioning, the back of the order, Verdugo's been terrible since the beginning of the year. Glaber, you mentioned his defense, but offensively, he's been terrible, and that was so surprising coming off one of his better years last year. Um, they need they need help, and Jazz has immediately sparked the team with two straight two-homer games. Um, that's awesome, and he's playing third base and looking solid there too.
Yeah, and that's the other thing is he's playing third base. He's not even playing a position he's played before. He's played second. He's played short when he was in the minors, but I don't think he has at the major league level yet, or maybe a game or two, but not consistently. And last year they converted him to center fielder. Now they have him at third because Glaber did not want to move from second base because he is a second baseman. His words, not mine. I think he's a DH. And even then, I kind of think he's maybe a left bench.
Yeah.
But no, and Jazz at third base so far has looked really good. Like he looks comfortable. He's one of those guys that you can kind of just throw him anywhere, and he'll figure it out pretty quickly.
He'll figure it out. Yeah, I mean, he figured out center field. It took him just a little bit. He looked bad at the beginning, and then he was fine.
Yeah,
He'll be fine at third base.
And I mean, third base and second base, they're different, but they're really not that different. Like third base, you only have to worry about going to one side.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, in a sense, it could be considered easier to a guy with the athletic ability of Jazz. I don't want to say third base is an easier position. It's not. But to him, it could be. So.
Yeah, and Jazz has a chance to become his full superstar self now that he's got the spotlight of New York. And you almost wonder if he's the type of player that would really flourish in more high stakes games than the ones that he's played for the majority of his major league career.
Well, and now he has the short porch. Miami is not an easy place to hit a home run. Yeah. It's really not easy if you're a left fielder. Like that's just kind of a really kind of deep right field there, relatively. And so now he's got the short porch in Yankee Stadium. He's got the pesky pole that he's going to be hitting at in Boston. Like he's got some really, really good ballparks to hit in for a guy like him. So you'll see his power numbers go up, and I think it's going to be a lot of fun.
I hope he can get on the nerves of the Red Sox fans too.
He's on the nerves of the Yankees fans.
In a good way.
No, he's like Yankees fans. The old timers, the crotchety old Yankees fans did not like him coming to the Yankees at first.
I think they're going to be okay if he hits 2 home runs a day.
They're going to get okay with it quick, but they're still not thrilled with it right now because he's not a Yankee. Yeah, he is. Anybody's a Yankee if you pay him.
Yeah.
But then I guess the other side of this that we've not even touched on is that the Marlins are going full rebuild. They recognize they suck, and they're trying to do something about it for the first time since the new ownership. I say that they traded away all their like big contracts and things right when the ownership changed, but they didn't actually get anything in return. They were just trying to shed salary. Now it seems like they're making some moves with the intent of actually improving the team in the future. So they got Agustin Ramirez, Jared Cerna, and why did my recording just stop? Yeah, so Agustin Ramirez, Jared Cerna, and Abraham Ramirez. So 2 22-year-olds. One of them is a catcher first baseman. They got a 22-year-old infielder, and then Abraham Ramirez is a 19-year-old kind of utility player right now. So they've got a lot of young talent that they got back from Jazz.
Yeah, let's just expand this into all the guys they got, because they did not stop at Jazz. They traded all their other regulars who are kind of established. Brian De La Cruz, Josh Bell, who is impending free agent.
AJ Puck.
A bunch of relievers. AJ Puck, Tanner Scott, and Brian Hoeing together to the Padres. Huascar Brazoban, JT Chagua. I mean,
Did you
they
mention
like emptied out
the? I've already forgot who the starting pitcher was that they traded as well.
Trevor Rogers.
Yeah, Trevor
Yep.
Rogers. There we go.
So they went all out in moving guys from their team, and I think I can't say that I know that much about the prospects, but just looking at the quantity of guys they got and kind of their ages, I see guys that are like 22, 22. Like they're actually, you said rebuild. I see quick rebuild. I see like they're not targeting guys that are like 18, 19.
Yeah.
They're looking to be good in 2 years.
Well, something that you said last week, and I wholeheartedly think it holds. There is no such thing as a 5-year rebuild anymore.
Yeah.
And this is kind of exactly that. Like for AJ Puck, they got Davison De Los Santos and Andrew Pintar, who are both top 15 prospects for the Diamondbacks. And honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if they were higher up on the list than that. They got Ramirez, Cerna, and Ramirez from the Yankees. I'm not terribly familiar with those guys, but like still. Then they got Connor Norby from the Orioles. They got Kyle Stowers. They got Graham.
That one's the most interesting one. Like I just want to talk about that one for a second because those two guys totally blocked with the Orioles, and now they'll probably be on the Miami team. They don't need to go to AAA. They've been waiting in the wings. They're ready to go.
No,
they've actually both played in the majors before.
So honestly, I look at this and I see this as almost like a direct replacement, if not borderline an improvement. Not from like a talent level necessarily, but from a kind of like a vibe standpoint. It's going to be an upgrade over Jazz, who's just kind of been dying in Miami. Connor Norby now gets a shot to start, so we'll see what we get out of him. And then Kyle Stowers is kind of coming in to replace Brian De La Cruz. So like they're not just putting in crappy players to replace the guys they just traded. They have actual major leaguers that they'll be able to insert, let them kind of kick off the next era of the Marlins, along with some guys in the rotation that are already there that I think are pretty good. And then they got a whole bunch of other prospects. I mean, from the Padres, they got Graham Pauley and Robbie Snelling and Adam Mazur. They got Garrett Forrester and Jun-Suk Shim from the Pirates, Will Schoenberg from the Mariners, Wilfredo Lara from the Mets. Like, they got so many young prospects. Only one of them has not had their 20th birthday yet. So they're going for a lot of lottery tickets, but they're going for a lot of lottery tickets that have seen some pro ball.
Yeah, and I heard this crazy stat on a podcast today. They mentioned that since 2015, in the month leading up to the trade deadline, so all like trade deadline deals basically, since 2015, 40% of the players have not reached the majors. Obviously, the guys in the most recent years, that makes sense, but it's a lot. It's a big percentage. 41% of players have accumulated less than one career WAR. So we're talking about over 80% of the prospects that are traded are basically doing nothing. So you're right, they're lottery tickets. But from that perspective, it makes sense to go off and get as many as you can. Like you can't win if you don't play.
So I'm doing a little bit of addition here. So you just said roughly 80% are not going to do much in the majors, right?
Uh-huh.
Okay, so you've got basically 3 of your 15 prospects. If that math holds, you're getting 3 productive major leaguers out of all these trades. And like, that's not bad, especially when you look at the prospect pedigree of some of these guys. If you look at a couple of these guys and what they've shown in small samples and as prospects, if 3 of them end up with more than one career WAR, there's a fairly decent chance one of those 3 ends up being like a significant piece of your team for a significant stretch of time.
Yeah, and I was mentioning the different timelines for these guys. Guy like Kyle Stowers, I don't even consider him a prospect because he's 26. He has service time already. His time is now. It's this season to basically make himself a starting caliber player for the Marlins going forward. Because
Yeah.
if not, someone else is going to take his job next year.
Yep. Exactly. So, um, so I applaud the Marlins for what they did here at the deadline, because I did not expect them to actually do it. But then I did see, meant to get this pulled up earlier. Marlins. There was a statement put out by their GM. Here it is. Peter Bendix, president of baseball ops. After a busy trade deadline with many tough decisions, we're excited about the layers of talent joining our org. Our goal is to be a consistently competitive team. With the talent and promising players we've acquired, we're confident we're moving in the right direction and building a deeper and stronger organization. We thank our fans for their continued support and share their goal of being a contending team that they can be proud of. So that is language that every team uses, and most teams don't necessarily mean it. For maybe the first time in Marlins history, I do kind of think that the words they're saying and the actions they're taking do kind of align.
So you didn't fall for their tricks like in the last few years
No,
when it seemed like they were okay.
no,
I didn't either.
no. It's the Marlins. Of course not. That would be like asking if I believed in the Rockies' moves and what they're doing. No.
Well, I mean, I did applaud the Marlins actually a year ago for making the Jake Berger trade, and that didn't actually work out. But I thought it would be a good trade at the time.
I mean, he's still their third baseman, isn't he?
Yeah, but he hasn't really been good.
Yeah. You win some, you lose some.
Hmm.
Oh, let's see. What another starting pitcher trade. Also one of the bigger trades of the deadline. No, Bunk, this is Ken Griffey Jr. One of the other big trades of the deadline. Eric Fetty coming from the White Sox. Cardinals, Dodgers, White Sox all came together to make a 3-team deal, sending Eric Fetty and Tommy Pham, along with a player to be named later and cash, to the St. Louis Cardinals. Tommy Edman and Michael Kopech to the Los Angeles Dodgers. And then Miguel Vargas, Alexander Albertus, and Gerald Perez to the White Sox. So that was a... Oh, also, the Cardinals did also give up 17-year-old starting pitcher Oliver Gonzalez.
And Tommy Edman.
Yeah, and Tommy Edman, which I thought I mentioned him. But so a lot of players moving in that deal. But that was a really, really interesting deal. It's like the one move that the White Sox actually completed that we expected them to make. And they got Miguel Vargas, who was kind of blocked on the Dodgers. And so he'll slot in somewhere around second base, third base, somewhere like that for the White Sox. And then a couple of prospects, infield prospects. The Dodgers, I think, might have gotten...
They got Michael Kopech.
Well, I'm just thinking, like, if you're going to rank who, like, won and lost the trade the most, I do think the White Sox kind of got the short end of the stick.
Well, okay. Here's what I'll say about the White Sox end of the stick. They got the really young prospects. They also got Vargas, and Vargas is actually the important player in the deal because he's a guy that's been kind of blocked. That he's kind of been up and down with the Dodgers. Never really got into any kind of rhythm with playing time. With the White Sox, obviously he's going to probably be like their second best hitter on the team immediately, and he'll get to play every day. And if he ends up being a regular, like a 2-3 WAR guy, then I'd say it's a good deal for the White Sox.
That's fair. And I kind of look at Vargas the same way that I look at Michael Bush, who just came to the Cubs this offseason.
Sure, yeah.
They're very, very similar situations coming from the Dodgers. I mean, when you have Freddie Freeman, who's the primary first baseman, Bush is not going to get a chance. And then you have Mookie Betts, who's second baseman, shortstop, right fielder. Like, when you have guys like him, you're blocking out Miguel Vargas. Both these guys were like ridiculously highly touted prospects.
Totally. Yeah.
And they've both got less than a year of service time. They're young, like they have a lot of talent, and we've seen what Michael Bush has done for the Cubs this year. Like, he's not been a superstar by any means, but he has been a solid hitter. And like Miguel Vargas, if he can do that same thing, yeah, that's definitely good for the White Sox. I do think that they probably could have gotten another major league player in this deal, but they went with the young prospects.
But with the White Sox situation, they're almost like the team that could go for the long rebuild, you know?
Yeah.
I'm not recommending it. It just seems like they are they literally lost their 17th game in a row tonight.
Yeah.
It's like they are not close to competing.
They're one of two teams who has not scored 10 runs since the All-Star break.
Total?
Total. You know who the other team is?
No.
The Cubs.
Oh, they scored 6 tonight. So
okay, well, until today, that was true. They had not scored
Really?
10 since the All-Star break.
That can't be true. They had a game where they scored 8. Like,
did
recently.
they?
Yeah.
I'll have to go look, but it might have been a 2-day old.
That's not right.
It might have been a 2-day old thing.
The first like 6 games out of the break, that was true, but
it was at least the first 9.
I don't know. I haven't been watching them.
Yeah, but point being, the White Sox are very far from contention. I think that they could have probably gotten another major leaguer out of there, or a closer to the majors prospect than a couple 19-year-olds and Miguel Vargas. But at the same time, this might be the better move for him anyway. But the Dodgers get Michael Kopech to go into the bullpen. They get Tommy Edman, who is a really good utility man. And if coming off of his wrist surgeries and like 7 setbacks in rehab, if he can be a productive bat for the back of their order and kind of take over a spot from a guy like Miguel Rojas, then they're going to be in good shape.
I don't think it's even about being a productive bat. So if they get even below average offense from Edman, he's like he's been an average hitter over his career, like 99 OPS plus, but his value comes as a defensive player. And I think he's a guy that they want to be their shortstop.
Yeah, well, and that's my point, is he's a better hitter than Rojas, period. Rojas is a terrible hitter. So if he can replace the defense you're getting from Rojas and improve the offense in that spot, that's a great move for the Dodgers.
Well, you know what Tommy Edman is? He's the better version of, I mean, assuming health, he's the better version of Chris Taylor.
Yeah.
He's new Chris Taylor. So he's going to play shortstop. He's going to play second base, probably the outfield too.
Kind of the same thing as Kike as well. Like,
yeah, the Dodgers love this type of player that's versatile and actually plays pretty good defense too. I like the Kopech get because they've been having some serious meltdowns in their bullpen with Evan Phillips taking a huge step back, Daniel Hudson having some rocky outings. They don't really have a set closer, and they've been doing that for years, but usually it ends up being okay. Their bullpen's fine. It's not really a problem. Kopech could be the guy that steps up, and he has some crazy stretches where he looks like the best pitcher in baseball. It's not consistent.
He's been in one of those stretches recently. I mean, the man threw an immaculate inning, 2 weeks ago?
Yeah, but it's hit or miss with him. It's like sometimes he just has no command, no idea where the ball's going. But the Dodgers feel like the team that could get the most out of him, and they've got him for a few more years. I would not be surprised to see Michael Kopech return to starting.
That'd actually be interesting to see. Kind of see Kopech do what Crochet did this year.
Totally.
And then the third leg of this trade, and it's the part that I obviously am most in tune with, but I also think it might be the most effective right now part of this trade. And that's the St. Louis Cardinals getting Eric Fetty, starting pitcher from the White Sox, and bringing back Tommy Pham to be a right-handed bat in this order. So the Cardinals are an incredibly lefty-heavy team. 7 out of the 9 hitters in the starting lineup every day are left-handed or switch. And sometimes it's 8. Like, it's very, very
That's
much. No, I guess it would be 7, sometimes 6.
It's usually, I mean, their 3 big bats are right-handed.
Yeah, and everyone else is left-handed.
Yeah.
So, but our good right-handed, or our big bats, only one of them's been good. So, like, we only have one effective right-handed bat. So bringing in Tommy Pham, who's been really good this year, and already in, 2-3 games for the Cardinals, has a grand slam, an RBI double. Like, he's been all over the field. He looks happy, and he seems to be the spark that the Cardinals offense needed. And then we also get Fetty, who's going to come in and upgrade that rotation. It looked like it was going to kick Andre Palante out of the rotation. However, Lance Lynn just came out yesterday and with knee issues, so Lance Lynn might be hitting the IL. But I would say Fetty is an upgrade over Lance Lynn. So, I mean, it's an upgrade either way.
With Fetty's the most Cardinals acquisition ever.
Yep.
He's just like all their other guys. He's an older guy, kind of crafty.
He's 31.
Oh, is he? I thought it was like 33 for some reason.
He's 31.
But yeah, he's like
he's literally
a young guy.
He's literally like another Miles Michaelis, a dude who did not do well here in the U.S., went over and pitched in Korea, right?
Just like Michaelis, yep.
Yep. And then he won the Triple Crown, the pitching Triple Crown in Korea, came back and is having a great year, just like Michaelis did when he came back. So,
however, I will say that I think some of it is smoke and mirrors. I don't think that he's as good as he's pitched this year. Not saying that he's not a good get, and not saying that he's not a solid pitcher, but I don't think he's a low 3s ERA guy. I think he's like like a 4 ERA type guy, back end starter.
I don't think he's as good as he's pitching either. That's why I made sure to say I think the Cardinals got the best right now part of the deal. Because the way he's pitching right now, the way Tommy Pham is hitting right now, it's exactly what the Cardinals need to kind of take that next step and actually go on a run. They're still in contention for the division. Like, they're only 3 games out of the division, something like that, 4 games. But yeah, so like these moves, along with some of the others that they made, trading Dylan Carlson for Sean Armstrong to come in the bullpen, that'll kind of help with some of the overtaxed bullpen arms of like Jojo Romero, Andrew Kittredge. Like, the Cardinals made sure to go out and actually address every major need that they had. Are they the best players that were available for each of those needs? No. But they also didn't give up the entire farm, which they don't have to get it. So
Yeah. I actually, as we talked through this trade, I think all the teams did pretty well in this deal. Because they all had different needs, and they all worked together to make this happen.
Yeah. So I'm really pretty impressed with how that trade shook out. It'll be interesting to see who the PTBNL is. So, because there's still one name that has not actually happened yet in that trade. So, let's see what other
We
What other
got to talk about
trades
the
you want to
Rays.
talk about? Oh, the
We got to talk
Rays.
about the Rays. So the Rays went berserk in this trade deadline. They made 10 out of the 60 trades, and um, it's kind of it got kicked off by Randy. Randy got traded to the Mariners, and if you're a Rays fan, you're sitting there and you're like, man, we just traded like our guy, our favorite player to some other team just because he was getting more expensive in arbitration and the team's not really likely to make the playoffs. They're not bad. That's the thing. That's the thing that makes it hard because it's like the Rays are better than more
Most
than
NL
like half
teams.
the teams. I would say
Yeah.
they're really like a above average top half of the league type team, and they decided, this isn't our year. We're trying to reload, and they absolutely did that. They committed to their strategy of getting less expensive and adding more years of cost control, which is the Rays mo for going on like 20 plus years now of operating like this, and they do it successfully. Um, they don't have bad seasons, really. Like, when was the last time the Rays had a bad season? It's been years and years. I can't
Probably
remember one.
been like 12 to 15, probably.
I think so, yeah. And um, I guess the biggest trade that they made, other than the Arozarena deal, was trading Isaac Paredes, because they took a guy who's just 25 and has 3.5 years of control, and they traded him to the Cubs. And they got back Christopher Morel, who's
An
he's
incredibly
a
one-dimensional. An incredibly two-dimensional player. He's got power and he's got some speed.
yeah, yeah, but he's got he's got one giant big tool, and that's the power, and the Rays hope they can access that. And
Access that
um,
and develop somewhat of either a hit tool or a defensive tool. He is Isaac Paredes, just with 2 less years of control. If you think about it,
but he's the exact opposite type player. With Paredes, he's a guy that has very little raw power, but he's done an insanely good job of hitting pulled fly balls and getting home runs. And the Rays are basically banking on him not being able to continue that type success. And basically, they think Paredes is maxed out. He can only plateau or get worse from here. He's had his best years. His approach is going to get exploited. That's what they're thinking, and they're thinking that they'll take Morel and turn him into a productive player. But it's such a interesting trade because Paredes is like a three-ish 4-win player established, and Christopher Morel was negative -0.1 WAR this year on account of his bad defense and not really hitting. He's hitting 199
yeah, with a
when they trade.
major strikeout problem.
Not really. You would think that,
Wait,
but he's cut his strikeout rate 7% this year. It's only 25% this year, but he's
really?
not. He's been incredibly unlucky, but the batted ball numbers are not quite as good as they were a year ago. So Morel's like a hard one to figure out because he should certainly be doing better than he is, um, based on what the numbers say.
But yeah, that it's going to be an interesting deal to watch here in the next couple years. I kind of wonder if depending on how Morel turns out, that'll end up being basically the next Randy Arozarena trade for the Rays. Because when the Cardinals traded Arozarena, I think it was Arozarena and Pham that went together over to the Rays, and I can't even remember who the Cardinals got back, but like then you see what Randy became. You see Tommy Pham continued his success around the league. Like there's a pretty decent chance that Morel becomes that guy.
He could, but what's different is I don't think the Rays gave up anything major for Randy. Here, the Rays, they're giving up like an established all-star player who's only 25, which is unusual. And the Cubs making this move is really aggressive because it shows that there's no there's no clear cut like sell and become worse. The Cubs sold, I mean, they sold their guy and then they improved. They improved their team in the current and potentially in the future as well because they have Paredes for several years now and they're showing that 2025 they're going to be competing like it's not there's no step back.
Uh, Randy was with Jose Martinez for Matthew Liberatore. Was the big piece of that deal. So, also, I didn't realize there was a player to be named later in the Randy to Seattle trade. So the Rays are actually getting another name later.
Yeah.
So, but no, the Rays, they moved a lot of players. Jason Adam went to the Padres. They had Morel coming from the Cubs. They had
plus two other prospects.
Yes. Oh, yeah. And two other prospects. They got three prospects from the Orioles for, I don't even remember who, Zach Eflin. In Jackson Baumeister, Mac Horvath, and Matthew Etzel. Two of those guys are in the top 30, at least for the Orioles, and Baumeister and Horvath. So, like, they got a lot of intriguing names back, and knowing the Rays might end up doing something with them.
Yeah.
So,
let's talk about the Orioles because they had probably the weirdest deadline, in my opinion. So they got Zach Eflin. That was filling a clear need in their starting rotation. They don't really have a surplus of starters, but then they did some odd things. They traded Austin Hayes and they got back Sir Anthony Dominguez and Christian Pache. That's an interesting trade on its own because it's two competing teams that basically said, let's flip these players because we don't. I mean, the Orioles don't really need Austin Hayes. He's redundant in that outfield. They're looking for another reliever, and then they're looking for a defensive center fielder. They got that, so that's all fine. But they said, okay, we need to replace Austin Hayes. So they at the right up against the deadline, I think they traded for Austin Slater. But the weird one to me was that they traded for Eloy Jimenez because I don't see how he fits on this club because he's only a DH, and that's gonna like clog up the logjam even further. They haven't done enough to clear up spaces on the club. I feel like they needed to trade someone who's, I don't know, blocked on the active roster.
Yeah.
Am I missing something that they did?
They got Levin Soto, Trevor Rogers, Eloy Jimenez, Gregory Soto, Austin Slater. Like, who did they give up to? Who did they give up to Cincinnati for Levin Soto and Austin Slater?
I can't imagine much.
I'm not even seeing anyone come up on Cincinnati from the Orioles. Did Cincinnati just give them to him? Was it cash?
I don't know.
This is just weird.
Right? I thought it was kind of weird.
They end up getting two of the Phillies relievers.
Yeah. And why are the Phillies trading relievers, by the way, like Gregory Soto?
I mean, the Phillies did get Tanner Banks at least. So like,
yeah, and they also got Carlos Estevez. So I guess maybe they felt like.
Ultimately, Soto. I feel like they've upgraded.
Yeah.
So that kind of makes sense then. If you've upgraded and you got to clear spots, you might as well flip them. But I don't know. It's weird. And
I don't think
then
they did enough. I would have done more because this is a team that is trying to win their division, be the best team in the American League. I feel like they didn't make the necessary upgrades. I would have gone hard after like another starting pitcher that's better because I don't feel like Trevor Rogers is that great. I like Zach Eflin; he's okay, but he's more like a number three starter. They need something more.
yeah, I mean, behind Burns, like Grayson's probably their number 2, right?
He's really good, yeah.
Yeah, but I'm kind of with you. Like, if this team really, really wants to set themselves apart in the AL East and in the American League in general, and try and just dominate their way to that pennant, it these moves do feel really weird. Like Aloy, I get why the White Sox traded Aloy away. Like he was always hurt. He was getting more expensive. Like you were paying him to basically never play. So they cleared some salary space there. Okay. Um, he doesn't fit Baltimore at all.
No,
And
he does
then
not.
leaving Soto, why?
He's
You have,
shortstop.
yeah. It's like you have so many infielders. Jordan Westberg did just break his hand today. So now trading Connor Norby, him going down with a broken hand. Like Jackson Holiday did just get called back up, but he got called back up because they'd finally cleared a little bit of logjam. So you're just kind of you cleared logjam and then you made it worse, but with worse players.
I don't know. It's just a depth move. I don't think that one's like super egregious or anything.
No, but as you were
Not a bad
mentioning
thing
with
to have depth.
as you mentioned with some of the outfielders too, though, like
They're just shuffling deck chairs.
yeah,
Yeah, that's what it felt like to me. I mean, I saw Eflin as an upgrade, but other than that, I wasn't thrilled with this group of moves.
if they're just shuffling things up to try and spark something, maybe. But I feel like that's an awful lot of shuffling for a
Yeah.
team that was doing pretty darn well. So I don't know. I don't get it, but
But speaking of teams that didn't do enough, what were the Guardians and the Twins doing? Did they think the deadline was August 3rd or something?
probably no.
Yeah,
I
so the Guardians went and they
honestly
got
I wouldn't be surprised if they're just waiting for all these waiver deals that are going to happen for teams that are just like, screw it.
the waiver deals don't really happen though.
Well, no, I'm
Anymore.
talking like last year's waiver deals, like when the Angels just
Those the
started cutting
Angels.
everybody.
But that's like a rare thing that's never happened.
But there's people that are thinking it's going to happen again, and that's going
Yeah,
to start becoming a thing.
maybe.
So
But what did the Guardians do? They traded for Alex Cobb. They urgently needed starting pitching. They've been somehow piecing it together for months upon months with Ben Lively and Xavier Curry and most random starters ever.
they did actually go out and get a legitimate outfielder,
Mhm.
not a
Yeah.
Miles Straw outfielder, a legitimate outfielder in Lane Thomas, a guy who can hit, a guy that can field, a guy that was not a middle infielder.
Hey, do you know who the Cardinals got for Lane Thomas? Do you remember what that deal was? It was a trade deadline deal, in fact.
Because that was with the Nationals, right? Like we traded him to the Nationals.
Yep.
Was it a reliever?
It was Big John Lester. 2 months of him.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that.
So that's like the success story of like just a random guy that you get for a rental. Because Lane Thomas ended up being like a really solid regular for several years for the Nationals, and then they turned him into more prospects when it was time for him to be moved.
Yeah, but those are literally the only two moves the Guardians made were Alex Cobb and Lane Thomas.
And the Twins did even less. They traded for Trevor Richards, a reliever, and that was their one move.
They only made one move.
Yeah, and this is a team that's good. Like I really like the Twins club. I think they're a solid team, but they certainly could have done some more.
You know, another team that I'm actually seeing in here that did not make many moves. Um, in fact, they made a total of two. Uh, is the Milwaukee Brewers
Yeah,
getting reliever Nick Mears from the Rockies for Bradley Blalock, and I don't
they
even
trade.
know how to pronounce that first name. Something Herrera. And then they also the bigger one is that they went and got Frankie Montas from the Reds.
And then previously they'd also traded for Aaron Savali. And I feel like yeah, the Brewers, they're another team. I feel like I keep repeating myself, but desperate for starting pitching. They've been rolling out Dallas Keuchel for a little bit, and that's clearly not going to work out. It's amazing this team has been holding on to first place for as long as they have because they don't seem like they're good, but that's just what the Brewers do, right?
Yeah, they started out hot, and then the other teams in the Central just haven't been able to catch up yet. That's really what it seems like. It seems like the Cardinals, the Pirates, and the Brewers had been playing about equal for the last month. And so it's just they had the lead to start with, so they still have the lead now. But I don't know that I believe that that's going to hold true. How good has Frankie Montas been this year?
Not very good.
I was going to say I didn't think it was that great.
No.
No, he's got a 5 ERA and a 4.9 FIP. He is walking about 4 batters per 9, which is just absolutely insanely high, with very few strikeouts.
Yeah, he's not the old Frankie Montas from like 2020. That guy's not around.
Yes, you could definitely tell he's aging too, because his fastball velocity's down about 2 ticks from his peak with Oakland. So I don't know. Like I'm not, as a fellow National League Central fan, I am not scared of the Brewers after picking up Frankie Montas. Like there's just some moves where you see a team get a guy and you're like, oh crap.
Yeah,
This
I mean,
is
I
not
feel like
that.
that didn't happen. That didn't happen this year.
No, I
There
mean,
weren't
Jazz to the
many.
Yankees maybe would be the
Maybe.
closest thing.
Yeah.
So obviously there's a lot of other trades, and I think when I ask you this question, you're more than welcome to throw out some other trades into this. But out of the, let's just say, out of the teams that are rebuilding or sold, the teams that sold at the deadline, how would you award medals to those teams? Like who did the best? Because
Miami did the best. I think that's for sure for me because I don't. Not a lot of other teams committed to selling as strongly as the Marlins did, and they got so much um, diverse talent. I thought they totally fleeced the Padres. I know we shouldn't really judge deals like 2 days after they happen, but they took a reliever in Tanner Scott, two relievers. I mean, Tanner Scott's a fine reliever, but they traded two relievers for four prospects and three of the top four Padres prospects. I mean, you can't do a lot better than that in a trade, I don't think. That's got to be one of the single best moves, like on surface level, on paper, that can be made.
yeah, I can't really argue with you there. So I'm kind of looking, and I do honestly think that the Rays might be number one to me. Mostly because I believe that the Rays are going to be able to unlock the talent from some of these guys. The As far as like just the names that you get in return, I think you're right. I think it's the Marlins, and there's really no question about it. But the Marlins have never proven that they can develop a prospect. And so I see all these names come in, and it makes me excited. But they didn't really get a whole lot to put on the club right now. Not that it matters. The Rays made moves to, one, load their farm system back up, and two, have a couple guys on the major league club that with the Rays organization could potentially unlock some new tools out of these guys like Morel. If they could figure out why he's not able to get his batting average up and help him with that, he's got a ridiculous amount of power. Teach him to play first base or something. I don't know. Dylan Carlson, get him to only hit from the right side. The dude's probably going to be pretty good, and he's a good defender out in center field. So like, yeah. So like, the Rays got pieces that I think they can fix at the major league level, and a lot of good prospects. Like they got Dylan Lesko from the Padres. Like they took the other good Padres prospects. So for me, I think gold goes to the Rays.
Yeah, no, that's fair. I just don't like the Rays approach. I can never give them the gold star because I don't like the approach. But I agree. Like they probably did great in the deal.
See, I also hate the approach, but within the scope of what they do, this is a really good deadline for them, I think, is the way to put that. Like, I hate that they do it this way.
But I hate it, right? Because if you're a fan and you see your team over 500 and they're selling their best players, and you're like, what's the point, or what are we even doing here?
Yeah. But I do give the Marlins silver. And then, like, the teams that sold, there's really not a whole lot more. I mean...
Well, last place medal goes to the Rockies, who traded none of their players except for Nick Mears and Jalen Beeks.
Yeah.
I mean, what are we doing? What are they doing exactly? And I don't... You're right. I don't think the A's did enough, despite trading the one reliever for a solid package. But why are you holding on to Brent Rooker at this point? Brent Rooker could help a lot of clubs right now. He's having an awesome season. He's got a 900 plus OPS. The guy can mash. He should be fetching them like a nice haul because he's got years of control as well. I don't know if Brent Rooker is really going to be the same guy in like 2 or 3 years when the A's are supposed to be back in contention. So it doesn't make sense for them to keep him.
Yeah. I don't get that either. I think, just to finish up the gold, silver, bronze, I think by default, actually, you know what? No, screw the White Sox. There is another team. I think Detroit probably gets the bronze. Like, we haven't really talked about them, but they traded away Mark Canha. They traded away Jack Flaherty, and I think one or two others, and they got
Carson
Kelly, and they got a fairly good number of prospects back. Like, they got like 5 different prospects. Is it 5 or is that 6? Yeah, they got Trey Sweeney, they got Joseph Montalvo, Eric Silva, Theron Lorenzo, Chase Lee. They got a couple more guys from the day before, and Ricky Vanasco, Tyler Owens, Liam Hicks. Like, they got a lot of prospects in return. A lot of them are pitchers, but I don't know that that's a bad thing for the Tigers.
No, I think you're spot on. Like, the Detroit, we can see the vision for them improving. They look like they're on the up and up, and this is going to help them, because keeping those veteran 35-year-old guys, what's the point of that?
Yeah. So I guess if we're looking at then the maybe some of the smaller clubs, the clubs that aren't necessarily buying or selling, kind of, how would you rate those? Like,
the teams that aren't buying or selling, they're just like in the middle.
Yeah, they're doing a little bit of both.
Yeah, like, so I would think that the Cubs did the best at this, because they truly only added guys that will help them next year and beyond by adding Paredes. Paredes was clearly a guy that had a lot of competition for his services because a lot of contending teams this year easily could have used Paredes in their lineup, and the Cubs stepped up and provided the best offer for the Rays. So that's clearly a good thing. They also added Nate Pearson, former first round and top prospect for the Blue Jays. I could see Nate Pearson being a lot better with the change of scenery because we know that the guy has an absolutely electric arm. I don't know if
Yeah.
that probably as a reliever, but he could be a dominant reliever. And then they moved Mark Leiter for a couple 24-year-old prospects, a pitcher and a infielder. So they're adding guys that are like close to major league ready or um, already ready in the case of Paredes. So they did the best job of threading the needle, so to speak.
I think you've talked me into the Cubs being the gold there. I do think that another NL Central team did a really, really good job, and it's one that we probably wouldn't talk about. And that's Pittsburgh. I think Pittsburgh did a great job. So they got Nick York, a young infield prospect from the Red Sox. They got Jalen Beeks for their bullpen. They got Ryan De La Cruz, Isaiah Kiner Falefa, that's a really young team. So Isaiah Kiner Falefa is not the greatest baseball player of all time by any means, but he is a good veteran to have in that locker room to go kind of with Kutch, be a bench bat that can a utility guy that can play anywhere.
He's also having like a fantastic season this year.
Yeah.
It's kind of interesting. I like these moves a lot looking at them now. And I'm kind of rooting for the Pirates because it seems fun, like for them to be the surprise team this year.
Yeah, and then they did,
especially with they're supporting their awesome starting pitching because they're a team that actually sort of has a depth in starting pitching because they traded Martin Perez, they traded Quinn Priester for Nick York. But I had a question about the Nick York thing. What are they doing exactly with all these second basemen? So they have Nick Gonzalez at the major league level. They have Termar Johnson, who's their top prospect. And then now they trade for another second baseman, Nick York. Where are all these second basemen going to play?
Well, Cleveland doesn't have a problem putting second basemen all over the field.
Their guys are shortstops, at least.
Yeah, same thing.
Yeah.
No, but then the one other thing about the Pirates is the Pirates, like, they got a lot of like older guys, 27, 28, 29. But then they did also go out and get, like, from the Padres, they got an 18-year-old pitching prospect. So, like, they're not just kind of selling out for let's try and get old guys and make this run this year, because they're only a game and a half back of a wild card spot right now. They're very much in it. And they're addressing it like they know that they're in it. But they also did go and make a move or two to get prospect capital back. Because Martin Perez, probably not the highest, best 18-year-old pitcher that we've ever seen, but he's an 18-year-old pitcher.
Probably the worst 18-year-old pitcher.
I mean, if he's an 18-year-old pitcher in professional ball, there's a decent chance he's kind of good.
Sorry, that was all shade to
Martin Perez. Yeah, that's fair. What are the Padres doing?
Okay, yeah, the Padres.
Oh, well, I guess let's do our bronze medal first, because otherwise we're gonna get distracted and forget. Teams that threaded the needle.
Well, probably, I think the Mets did a decent job. They added Paul Blackburn and I think a reliever or two.
Huascar Brazoban and Tyler Zuber.
Yeah, so they didn't. I like the Mets this year. I mean, they're straight up competing for the wild card, the top wild card. They had passed the Braves at one point last week, so they're a team that.
Well, they also got Ryan Stanek.
Ryan Stanek too,
and
and
Jesse Winker.
Jesse Winker, and they also had acquired what's his
Phil
face, Phil
Maton.
Maton. Yeah, so they kind of revamped their bullpen, and they also added a couple nice pieces for the bench or platoon. And why not? Like you're in it, you should compete. That's what Cohen said that the Mets would do, and that's exactly what they're doing.
So yeah, I agree with you there. Cubs, Pirates, and Mets. The the one other kind of category that I wanted to ask you about is teams that didn't trade their pieces. Who was the smartest? Because like the Mets didn't trade Pete, and I
Yeah.
think that was a smart move given where they're at right now. Like there's other teams had guys to trade that they didn't. The White Sox
Yeah.
had Luis Robert and Garrett Crochet. They didn't trade either, and I think that's the biggest miss that they had.
So I think the team that did the best not trading their guys would be the Jays. I think a lot of people are ripping on the Jays because they're like, oh, they should have traded Vlad, they should have traded Bo, they should have traded all their players because they're bad this year. And to me, the Jays are doing the right thing because those are elite talents, and elite talents don't get replaced by random prospects that are 18 years old.
Yeah.
They are in a situation where they've just got to try to improve over the offseason, whatever that may look like, free agency, trades, but they need to run back the same core. There's no choice. There's no point in blowing it up a year early.
Well, and especially when the absolute biggest problem that that team has is not necessarily runs scored. Like they're not doing what they're supposed to do offensively, but their bigger problem is pitching. They have the worst bullpen in the league. It gives up so many runs. And like I mean, they traded Kikuchi and they traded from some of their starting pitchers that are going to be gone here pretty quick. So like, yeah, they tore down their starting rotation and they're going to look even worse, most likely coming in the back half of the season. But pitching is their problem. Their number one problem. It's not hitting. So if hitting isn't your problem, pitching can be fixed. Especially a bullpen. A bullpen year to year can go from the worst to the best. We've seen it. The Phillies did it. Phillies did it within a season.
Yeah, no, they did an awesome job rebuilding that. So yeah, it can be done. And um yeah,
So
trading Vlad and Bo never made any sense to me.
yeah, I'm right there with you. I think the Jays were the smartest to keep their guys. I do think that. I mean, you could make an argument to me that the Mets probably should have still moved on from Pete, but to me, it's more important to keep Pete there and give him 3 or 4 year extension and keep him with the club. I realize he's just a first baseman, and you could get a first baseman at a Dollar Tree, and he probably be okay. But Pete is their guy. Like he is the face of that franchise. I feel like it's almost more important, given the fact that he's still a fantastic hitter. It's more important to keep him in the fold. And so the fact that they held pat and didn't trade him, I think gives them silver.
Yeah, I mean, I'm all for teams going for it, and the Mets are not just gonna like fold unless they're totally out of it like they were last year.
Yeah. Ooh, who would be the last one?
The
The
last
silver medal.
for a team that didn't sell off.
Yeah. Rockies easily.
Well,
No, the Giants perhaps. I don't know
the
if they really
Giants are
had.
no, they don't fit into that category because they did some strange stuff.
True.
Like they did a little bit of buying and selling, but not necessarily in the smartest way. Um, there's no other team that really fits in this category. I mean, I don't. There's no one I want to give it to.
That's fair. All right, we had a bunch of DNFs.
Yeah.
So there's no bronze medal. We're going to award it to the Chicago Bears.
Maybe Texas. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not really sure who they would have moved, though.
They could have moved. They could have gone really big and blown it up and traded like Adelise and then starting pitchers like Scherzer and others.
True, but less than a year after winning the World Series, it feels like a really weird time to just go, we have a bunch of really young, really good talent. We just won a World Series. We're not doing great this year. Blow the entire thing up. That just
So maybe it was an obvious decision, but this award is for not trading your guys. So
that's true. Okay, yeah, you're right. Texas by default gets the bronze, and then there were a bunch of DNFs.
yeah.
All right, we are well over an hour. So, do you have any final comments?
I think we touched on almost every team in the league. I don't think we talked about Boston at all.
Boston actually had some pretty good moves in here too.
They did, yeah.
Getting Quinn Priester, I like that move. He could come up and be a pretty good back of the rotation guy, and potentially a little bit more than that, like up to maybe a number 3. Like, he has good stuff. And then they traded with the Blue Jays for Danny Jansen to come in and take over as their starting catcher from Reese McGuire. Danny Jansen's a really solid catcher. So
what happened to that other catcher that they had that was doing good?
Connor Wong?
Yeah.
Is he hurt?
He might be, yeah. I thought he was doing great, but anyways.
I think he might be hurt. But yeah. And then the Boston did also take James Paxton, who was DFA'd by the Dodgers. So like they made some depth moves, and then they also made some moves to get guys to help them now. Earlier in the month, they had traded for Trey Wingenter from the Tigers, and they're also right there in it for a playoff spot. So definitely happy if you're a Boston fan. 2 games out of a wild card spot. I think they've got a decent chance to come up and take over if the Twins or the Royals fall out. So good deadline for them as well.
Yeah, it was a good deadline for me too, except for Christopher Morel, my favorite player, getting traded. That sucked. But
yeah,
it was really interesting because this year there were so many more trades that happened in the days leading up to the final couple days, which was unusual. Usually it all just kind of happens on the last 2 days.
And then there was still a frenzy at the very last second too.
Yeah, there was a ton going on. Yeah.
Yeah, this was a fun deadline. So, and I also am a little bit upset. Like, Dylan Carlson, I've been a huge Dylan Carlson fan since he came up. He never panned out, but he was like my favorite guy that didn't pan out. So seeing him go hurts a little bit. I understand it. I love Tommy Edman. I understand that we have a better version of Tommy Edman and Brendan Donovan, so redundant and hurt and only another year. So checks out. But no, it's one of those that it always hurts to see your players go. It's also really fun to see these guys come in. And especially in the instance where Tommy Pham comes back for a reunion and immediately in his first at bat hits a grand slam.
I don't like Tommy Pham being on the Cardinals.
Because he's going to help us?
No, because I like Tommy Pham too much.
Oh. Well, that's fair. I do think you like Tommy Pham more than I do.
Yeah, you don't like him. You hate him.
I kind of do.
Yeah.
But I like him as far as roster construction is concerned. Is that whatever. Anyway, we're way over time. Thank you all very much for hanging out with us. We will see you back here next week. Have a great time. If you enjoy the podcast, please subscribe on your favorite podcasting app or YouTube to make sure you don't miss any future episodes. Join the conversation on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok at Getaway Day Pod. If If you enjoy card collecting, check out our sister YouTube channel at Getaway Day Cards.